Hello, welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high-performing women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson-Ridley. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Christa Elza. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing in 2000 and immediately was drawn down the emergency medicine route and was a trauma nurse for 8 years. She's worked in field hospitals around the country, including New York City and Norfolk. And she has a story, I'm guessing, that she's going to share with us. But in 2020, before that, she became interested in functional medicine and made that transition. And in 2020, launched her virtual health practice, Eleve Health, I think. You can tell me about that. And is now able to provide and help women all around the country via webcam. As a functional medicine expert, she specializes in clinically investigating underlying factors of fatigue, hormone balance, thyroid issues, digestive issues, and more. And she uses breakthrough diagnostic testing that's rarely done in conventional settings to uncover the hidden causes of why women feel the way that they feel. So, Christa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro.
Abridged. We're going to have a lot to talk about because as we were sharing before we hit record, we function in a very similar space. But as I like to do with my guests, especially when we come from the Western world and moved into more of this functional medicine world, just kind of hearing a little bit of your story and what brought you to what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I became a nurse practitioner after years of being an RN and was a nurse practitioner in a clinic where we focused on hormone replacement, weight loss. And I was just finding that there was more and more younger people in, 30s to 50s range, men and women, but I was really honed in on the women, why they were coming in with the inability to lose weight and they could not shake this fatigue. A lot of them had sleep issues, anxiety. And I was just finding that what I was doing, all of my tools weren't enough to give them lasting change. They would feel good for about 3 months and then they come back and, the testosterone wasn't working for them. And so I started to ask more why is this happening in the first place? And I got some information on functional medicine and was immediately drawn to that. So I started studying that, became certified in the functional approach, which is really just looking for the root cause of why are you so tired? It's not just because you need more caffeine, like there's something else wrong. Yeah. And so dove into that and loved it so much. I really just felt like I was ready to serve people in a different capacity and be able to spend more time with patients and run different labs that aren't necessarily covered by the insurance model. So created an online space. And now I work with women to really get to the root cause of hormone issues, gut issues, anxiety, depression, fatigue. So it's been a wild ride, really fulfilling. And I really love what I'm doing now.
I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you because that, all of those symptoms that you just laid out, I find in every single woman I work with, and they all seem to be interconnected. So I think this is maybe where we're going to go today, but let's, and it seems to, I feel like my people I work with, women I work with are either like weight is a huge issue or energy is a huge issue, or oftentimes it's both. And it's like, well, which one's more important to you? And they can't really decide between the two. So maybe I haven't talked as much about, fatigue and just feeling like, ugh. So maybe let's start there and we'll just see where the time take us. But what are the things that you've been finding with your clients, or, what's really underlying this just being exhausted that we see women?
I find that women in their 40s, which is primarily who I work with on average, it's just it's a very stressful time overall on many avenues, because oftentimes we're at the peak of a career or we're very busy with kids. If we have kids too, we've oftentimes been in a relationship that we've been together for a while, so that can add different dynamics. And on top of all of that, we're experiencing some hormonal shifts in our body that we haven't experienced since starting puberty, right? So for the past 2 decades, we've been pretty consistent. Now, all of a sudden, things are a little bit wonky. And it's like, why can I not perform and do all of these things the way I could 20 years ago? And instead of freaking out about it, we just have to oftentimes look at the whole picture. And I like to work with people who are willing to adjust and look at their lifestyle, because oftentimes we have a symptom that is a lifestyle has a lifestyle cause to it, a root cause to it. And it's not that our bodies are broken. It's just that we have to be more intentional about our energy and our health than we did 20 years ago. Right. So it's making that adjustment, I find often is at the root of it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, I talk quite a bit about, well, like 90, I've seen stats that like 90% of the issues that take us into the doctor these days are actually lifestyle related. And if we,
yeah,
could
even
slow
breast
down.
cancer, breast cancer, we think, oh, it's got to be my genetics, it's got to be whatever. And 90% of breast cancers are lifestyle related. And we don't want to look at that. We don't want to absorb the fact that the wine that we love so much is actually doing us a disservice when we talk about our weight and our anxiety and our inability to sleep and our hormone dysregulation and breast cancer, right? Like we really want our wine. And it's not that we can't ever have it. It's just, we've got to find a balance, because I think it's the foods that we eat, the processed foods, it's the toxins that we do have control over that we are ignorant maybe about, and the level of stress that we bring in that really impacts the way we feel, and disease or not disease in our bodies.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I wasn't expecting to go this route actually, but for a period, I studied abroad in Europe. And when I was living over there, I got sick. I got a really nasty sinus infection. So I went to a doctor there, and he looked at me and he was like, well, you have sinus infection, stay home for a week and do steam every 2 hours and you'll be fine. And I was like, that's amazing that you just said that, because I would never hear that from a Western medical doctor here. Like, we are just, give me the drugs so that I can keep doing my life and not worry about what got me here in the first place. And, sinus infection or breast cancer, like it's a similar, we have this mindset of like, well, I have to keep going. I can't be interrupted, for my health. And when I was over there, I was studying violin over there and had a big concert. And I'm like, dude, I need to play. I got to do this. And so he gave me drugs finally. But, it's that perspective, I think, is something that has to shift in order for our health.
It does. And the Western way of learning just isn't around, coming from an acute care, critical care background, like 100%, we need the medications and we need the antibiotics. But when we start talking about fatigue and I just want my energy to be better, and jumping to antibiotics first thing, it really, a pill is not always the answer. And if we do need to be on a medication, say thyroid or blood pressure or something for our cholesterol, my goal is that we use that just interim while we're making lifestyle changes, so that it's not a long-term. Antidepressants, all of those things, right? Like, not that we don't ever need them, it's just that we shouldn't assume that that's like our lifelong ticket to freedom health-wise, because it's not.
Right. And I talk to more and more women who are frustrated by feeling like they have to be on them for the rest of their lives, because there is no conversation in the Western world of like, how do we make lifestyle changes to actually correct the issues, while you, like, there is a time and a place to use them. Absolutely. Like if your thyroid is totally shot, I'll just use that example, medication for a time to just get things functioning better, so you have the energy to do some of the stuff that will help you in the long term, makes sense. But taking it forever and ever does not. Right.
Oftentimes women with hypothyroid, that's a big cause for fatigue. And when we look at the full picture, I know in conventional medicine, they don't really even check labs to thoroughly evaluate the thyroid. They're not looking at T4 to T3 conversion. Is that even happening appropriately? Or do we have antibodies against our thyroid that's really working against us? And when we have that full picture, we can look at the root cause. Well, you're tired. Yes. You're gaining weight. Yes. You're constipated. Yes. You're depressed. Yes. Because your thyroid isn't working. But why? Why is that not happening? And so when we look at that whole picture, and we can see what's actually causing the thyroid to not function. It's not like one day the thyroid's like, I've been around for 45 years, I'm done. Like, that's just not, our body is fighting for us every second of every day. It's responding to something else happening in the body. And that's what I really want to drive home with people, is that it's not just that you are lacking Synthroid. It's that there is something happening that your thyroid is responding to. And that could be high cortisol levels, where the thyroid's like, ooh, we want to add less stress, so let's back off a little bit. Or the gut is just really, there's a lot of imbalance in the gut microbiome. And so that conversion from T4 to the potent T3 isn't happening. And so when we can teach people that, when people are aware of the root cause, then they get better and they don't need medication long-term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've talked in quite a bit of depth around the thyroid, but it's nice to have someone just reiterate the things that I say at times, because, there's a much bigger picture. And like similarly to you, I'm guessing, there's testing and stuff we can do that the red tape that is the insurance industry just doesn't like to, do, because they can't, I don't know what their deal is, but anyways, it's there's ways to dig.
I am firmly, I believe that it does come down to, and we don't have to meddle in the political aspect of this, but it really comes down to pharmaceuticals. And if, root cause medicine doesn't necessarily keep pharmaceuticals in business, right? And so there's not a big push for it. And because insurance and even our training is kind of focused on what medications resolve the issue, we're never going to get in that model. We're never going to get to the root cause, right? Because my goal is for you to be so empowered in your body that you don't need me, that I get fired in 6 months because you feel amazing. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a different model.
It is. It's a very different
model than keeping you on a pill forever.
There's not well, oddly enough, I've seen statistics that, virtual healthcare and more of the functional medicine stuff is actually moving towards being like a $1 billion industry, but it's not something the insurance world has tapped into yet. So, Okay. So, we've got a broken system, broken model. I haven't talked in depth actually about this on the show. I think most people know that, but it's one thing to know something and actually to do something differently. And so if you're listening to this is our invitation to actually take the steps to do something differently. Because I have a lot of conversations with women, who aren't necessarily ready to take on making changes, because it's not the easy route per se necessarily.
Right. It's not the easy route. It's an investment. It's an investment because you have to break out of that mindset that insurance is going to help you, because clearly we wouldn't be talking to these people if it had. And so a lot of it is just educating that, I get it. A lot of this testing is cash pay. But we're going to find out what's going on, and then you're going to move forward in your life. It's an investment in time and commitment, because you're taking back that power, and you're not relying on a doctor to say, well, this is what's wrong and this is the pill. You're going to learn and understand how your body works and how you can support your body. But that does take looking at that glass of wine and deciding, is it worth it or is it not worth it? And making those decisions, right? Because down the line in your life, the investment really reaps a lot of benefits.
Yeah, it really does. And, it becomes easier to ask those questions. Like I always share the story. My journey started when I was 20 and I went off dairy, gluten, and sugar over a summer. I was living on my own for the first time. I had no idea how to cook, and they didn't have gluten-free alternatives. And I was used to eating like pasta and bagels. And, so I kind of starved for a summer and figured it out, but I felt so much better. And so, even it's almost 20 years later and I'm like, my husband will sometimes ask me, he's like, well, don't you want the pizza or the ice cream? I'm like, not really, because I know that I get a sore throat and I'm not going to feel good for 3 days and I'll probably be mean to you. So
it's
not worth it. But,
it's true. But until you try it, you don't know how bad you feel.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people come to us, I'm sure you feel the same. They've tried other things and they're just kind of like, I feel their pain point is so high. Whatever symptom they have is so nagging at them that they're willing, for a period of time at least, to do anything, like just help me function better. It's when we start to feel better that we have to recognize, well, the reason we feel better is really pretty simple, but hard. It's a lifestyle change of making different food choices. And just taking more control over what you put in your body, the kind of how you manage your stress, those kinds of things, right?
How we feed our mental side as well as our, physically what we're eating. There's nutrition goes multiple ways, I think. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I find stress, again, going back to fatigue and stress, it comes in different forms, right? We've got like the stress that we think about, like, oh, my job is really stressful. My kids are, they're teenagers or they're toddlers, whatever. They're just causing a lot of stress. But we also have to think about the stress that our body perceives when we're eating a lot of processed foods. That is a threat to the body. I mean, it's programmed. We know our body can recognize nutritious foods, natural foods, but it cannot recognize some of the Cheez-Its or the, just the things that we eat on a day-to-day basis. Even things that we think maybe are healthy, but contain a lot of vegetable oils and things that really cause inflammation in the body. The body perceives that as a stress. And so it's not just, our job, it's the stresses of sugar and and that's a compounding effect on the body. So it's constantly in kind of that fight or flight mode of protection, which, you could be eating what you think is correctly, but you're adding, you're eating the healthy processed foods and you're still not able to lose weight because the body's seeing that as a threat and holding on to fat. It's inflammatory, right?
Yeah. I just had this thought as you were sharing that, and, modern society, and I talk a lot about like the curse of the modern day woman, basically, right? Because, we've reached this level where intellectually we keep advancing. But I think what we fail to remember or recognize is that so much of our physiology and just how the things that run without us having to think about it in our body, right? Those are very old systems.
Yes.
And they don't have this like intellectual knowledge to adapt and say like, oh, well, that's, the uncured version of whatever, so it must be better for me. Like it still reacts the same way in our body, and it can't differentiate. Same with stress, like the way stress is a perception, but the way our body responds to 5 p.m. traffic or whatever happened at work, or whatever's going on with your kids that day, any of that is like the tiger's chasing us and trying to eat us and kill us. And so that is how it actually reacts. And we actually never take a break from that. Like we're just in that constantly.
Yes, we never really, even scrolling social media and you see, a group of people went out and didn't invite you, that lights us up, right? And we're exposed to little pings in our brain like that all the time. And you're right. Our brain has not caught up to the modern world. The traffic is not going to kill us, but that doesn't, or being late to something isn't going to kill us, but our brain interprets it as the same as if we were under the stress of real death threat.
Yeah. And it's about learning how to, I think, train ourselves, but also give our bodies that chance to have its perception of like something's trying to kill me and eat me. Like I just interviewed someone right before this conversation we're having, and she said, I hate the word stress management. And I forget what she used instead, but like we have to learn how to, I wish I could remember what word she used. Anyways, it's all about giving ourselves the time to de-escalate. It's how I really talk about it with my clients.
Yes. I love to do somatic work. And that really means just feeling in, like becoming more aware of how something feels in your body, because our body really is that unconscious, and it can be helpful when we're trying to figure out what's causing us stress or what's bothering us or not, right? Oftentimes we aren't in tune with how our body is feeling unless it's very overt, like an extreme stomach ache or whatever. But when you're calm and you feel tension in your body, and oftentimes I tell my clients too, like envision something that really brings you a lot of tension. Where does that feel in your body? Where do you feel that? So they can tune into that. Like, oh my gosh, I feel it like right here in my stomach or right here in my chest. And then let's think about something that brings you a lot of peace. Is it on the beach? Is it with your child? Like what is it that brings you a lot of peace? Feel that in your body and feel that difference so that they can start to recognize, oh my gosh, that tight feeling is happening. And so instead of just fighting it, just allowing it to be there, what does this need? I need to feel peace. I need to tell my brain it's calm. And that does wonders for really calming down. First of all, being aware that that's even happening. And then secondly, tapping into deep breathing and just relaxing your mind so that you're not putting out those stress hormones all the time that are really wreaking havoc on inflammation in your body and really taxing your adrenals, right? So part of it's just becoming aware that that's even happening. And it's quick and easy. All you need to do is just tune into how your body's feeling, right?
Yeah, which sounds so simple, but I know for so many women, it is so hard. Like I will ask, what's your body trying to tell you it needs right now? And they're like, I have no freaking idea. So we just have to start somewhere with, having that awareness of ourselves, like you said, and tuning into ourselves. And so much of all of this is geared at that.
Yeah. Yes. And I love, again, going back to just stress and fatigue in this age, most women, not all, but most women who I'm working with are still having periods, right? They're not menopausal. And another thing to keep in mind, women in this age, it's so important to start to tackle and be aware of the amount of stress in your body, because, and maybe you've talked with them before, you've shared this with your clients in the past, but our adrenals produce some of the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone too. But when the ovaries stop in menopause, that really puts more pressure on the adrenals, and the adrenals also make cortisol. So if we're running those just all the time, like we're under high stress constantly, menopausal symptoms are going to be a lot more abrupt, a lot more painful, a lot more mood swings, a lot more perceived stress at that time, and perceived just dysfunction in the body, because we're not supporting our adrenals in that way, cortisol wise, up until that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I have a theory that, I don't have scientific evidence to back this up yet, but I'm working on my PhD, so this might be a topic of it.
Yeah.
But, because of the modern day world that we live in this constant barrage of stress, and, we're constantly in fight or flight mode, I actually assert that menopause, because I work with women kind of going into that range or who have gone through it, but that we've normalized so many symptoms around it. But a lot of that's due to our adrenals are just too taxed and haven't been able to keep up with producing the amount of, sex hormones that they do, because they do, but it's becoming more and more negligible. And I think if we can learn how to manage all this stuff and have our adrenals be healthy and all that, like menopause probably wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Right. Absolutely. Right. They would enter that phase. Yeah. And it really does boil down to how we decide to manage our stress or take on more things really does affect our physical body. And downstream, it really does affect our gut health. It affects our adrenal health. And so when we talk about why am I tired, but I'm trying to juggle all of the things, we have to just take a real look at it. And oftentimes we can't change, we can't change our family dynamics. We may or may not be able to change our work life. And so that's when I really talk my clients in around the awareness. How does it feel in your body? How can you soothe that part of yourself right now? What does your body need? And then maybe, they need something like adaptogens. Ashwagandha, I love. If you're feeling particularly anxious, ashwagandha is a great adaptogen that kind of works with your body, with your cortisol response, to help mellow that out a little bit, so you're not quite so tense feeling, and it doesn't cause fatigue. It doesn't make you tired. It just kind of works with you. I don't know if you've used that, but I personally love it, and I recommend it all the time.
Yeah, that, and I do quite a bit with essential oils. So there's, I'm particular to doTERRA, but for those listening, there's a couple blends that are like pretty spot on and just helping us. Yeah. They impact our limbic system. And so, and same with ashwagandha, it's going to, help just change the cycle that the brain is on. And then the other thing I was going to share that I've started playing around with this year, that I've always been kind of standoffish to, because it's like, who the hell has time to meditate? But there's a huge body of, scientific literature out there around meditation. And when we can move the focus, and so I've been doing this app, training my mind. It's called Fit Mind or something like that. Not an affiliate or anything, but it has us like focus on your breathing, just in and out of your nose, like focus on the tip of your nose. And when we are able to just, even if it's short, just shift that focus, it gives the patterning that we've got going a reset.
Yeah. And our breath is powerful. And
it is.
The more you get into the habit of just using that when you're in the car, it helps us, it grounds us, just focusing on the breath. Again, who has time to sit here and do 30 minutes to 2 hours of meditation? Probably not a lot of us, but sometimes it just takes a 10-minute commitment and creating that habit. And then you start to go there. When you feel that, you're aware of that tension in your body, you go back to your breath, because a lot of times our stress response happens because we're either thinking in the past or we're thinking in the future. But most of the time, if we're in the present moment, it's not what we're creating it to be. Right. And so going back to our breath, I love that you brought up the breath, because it grounds us in the present moment. And oftentimes that's what we have control over, the present moment. We have no control over the past or the future. And so that creates unneeded stress. And the other thing I like to use the breath for is bedtime. When people feel wired and tired, they're tired, but they can't calm down. Really instilling some box breathing, where you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for a count of 4, and you hold that for 4. And I repeat that at least 4 or more times. But it not only calms your body physiologically because you're breathing in that way, it also is having you focus on just the breath, not what happened during the day, what's going to happen tomorrow. You're just right in the space, which is really laying in your bed in a dark space, right? It's a non-threatening environment, and yet our brains can take us to yet another threatening spiral. And so focusing on your breath can be helpful with falling asleep or getting back to sleep if you wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do the same thing, but with 5. You can do it with any count you want, really. Box breathing, or you can vary it. There's other, like, one of the things I've been learning is fire breath. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that actually helps move energy up and down your spine, and can, same thing with like a ladder breath. So you focus on raising your breath. There's all kinds of breath stuff you can do, but the box
breath work is powerful.
Yeah,
for sure.
The easiest.
The other basic thing that I like to talk about that sounds really silly, like breathing, is water. And I know that we've heard that forever, but water can be a powerful hydration. If we are dehydrated, which a lot of us are, I know for me, I would wake up, I would have my coffee, and then I would have a soda. Before I quit soda, I would have that at lunch. Before I know it, I haven't had any solid water. It's like, well, I've been drinking liquids, but it's not actually that hydrating. And so when our body is dehydrated, it really, our brain, it sends off kind of a signal of like, alert, because without water, we shrivel up. I mean, it's very much a threat to our body, our detoxing system, all of that. And yet most of us don't drink enough water. And so filtering your water and making sure you're drinking 60 to 90 ounces of water every day. So I create habits this way of, before I get to have my morning coffee, I have to drink a 30-ounce bottle or 30-ounce Yeti cup that I have. And that's just stacking the habits, right? To make sure at least I've got my 30 ounces in before I have my coffee, because I really want to have my cup of coffee. I enjoy it. And so that's another thing that is often very overlooked, and we minimize the importance of that.
Yeah, we really do. And actually, you just hit on, so these are the first 2 habits that I have women work on. And, I do a lot with nutrition and all that, but ladies, listen up to this. They see, and I struggled with this myself for years. It's like, well, that's so simple. There has to be more, like, give me the next thing. No, until you actually nail. And if you think of like what our body needs to survive, we can only go about 2 minutes without breath, I think, before we die. And then, water, it's like 3 days, but we can go up to 40 days with no food. And so, before we make any other changes, make sure you're breathing and make sure you're getting enough water.
And we overlook the simple things. We do. Human nature, we want some latest technology master pill. And a lot of the answers are very foundational. It's breathing, it's the water, it's removing toxins that we have control over. It's removing the plastics from our kitchenware and using glass instead. It's using cast iron pots instead of, it's replacing the vegetable oil with olive oil or avocado oil. It's filtering our water. A lot of those, it's cleaning up our beauty products, women particularly. We are exposed to a lot, even dry shampoo. I mean, a lot of them, if you look at the back of it, the propane is one of the first chemicals listed on the ingredients, and we're just, our skin is a giant mouth, and we are exposed to a lot of toxins, and our body's amazing. It can handle a lot. But when we also want a glass of wine or 5, and we're eating processed food because we're in a hurry and we're storing things in plastics, it's too much. The body can only take so much before it just starts to choose what's most important. And then the other things they build up because the body can't quite get to all of it. So cleaning up what we can, obviously I don't like to harp too much on toxins to the point that people get anxiety about, oh my gosh, we're exposed to so much. Yes, we are. And there's quite a bit that we can actually control. Open your windows when it's nice out. I know you're in Alaska. You might not want to open your windows right now, but as soon as the weather and the temperature is nice, air out your house as frequently as possible. Little things like that really do add up.
They do. And it's about controlling what we can because there's so much that's outside of our control. Like, you mentioned I live in Alaska. I do. And generally, we actually have some of the poorest air quality, even though it's the least populated area, because in the summer we have fires and in the winter we have the ice fog that just sits. And so all the wood smoke, sits so
Yeah.
on the clear days, I do air out. But, there's things that are outside our control in our environment. And the more we can be conscious of the choices that we're making inside our environment, the better chance we have, basically.
Yeah. We do what we can. And
yeah,
if you can afford to buy, especially the dirty dozen, if you can afford to buy some things that are organic, super helpful, because all of the pesticides, that it really adds up to, that's something else our body has to manage. It has to cope with that ingestion. So although you might be choosing healthy foods, if they're covered in pesticides, then how healthy is it, right? So do what you can and what you can afford. I tell my kids, like, at least strawberries, like that's part of the dirty dozen. My kids love strawberries. Like, let's buy organic, because that's just one of the top known fruits. Anyway, so yeah, it's decisions like that and little tweaks that add up over time.
Yeah. And when, say, you have a husband who buys non-organic, this just happened yesterday. He came home, he's like, look at these strawberries. They look so good. I'm like, organic. So they will be soaked and scrubbed and all the things, in Alaska, we kind of have to pick and choose our battles. And that was one I was in a fight yesterday. But and defining what those values are going to be for you and what you can really embrace, not because you feel like you have to or should, like really just coming to that place on your own, I think, is what has us be successful. And you get there by understanding what your body's doing and what it needs.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. We've talked about a lot. And I think it's making a list of things that you learn, if for people listening, it's making a list of things you learn and not believing that you have to do everything all at one time, but it's acknowledging that these are on my agenda. And once I nail this down, like once I trade out all my plastics for glass, then I will work on getting a new water filter. It's step by step that we can add on. And beauty products, once something is out, then I replace it with a cleaner option. So it doesn't have to happen all at one time. But the more you learn, the more we stack and the more we get better. The more we know, the more we can't unknow it, right? The more we know that maybe the wine is really part of our fatigue and our anxiety, that maybe we'll make choices of when it's worth it and when it's just not.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could talk about this all day long, I think, but we can start to wrap up from here. But I was just thinking, there's what we know and what we know we don't know. And then there's all this stuff that we don't even know that we don't know. And so hopefully, part of my goal with this podcast is to share some of that stuff that maybe you don't even know that you don't know.
Right? Yeah.
And then this has come up on a few episodes, but for those interested in kind of looking at what's in your house and your environment, your cleaning products, your beauty care, all that, the environmental working group is a good place to just kind of find out. And then there's a couple of apps that I'll try to find I don't know if you have any off the top of your head that are your go-to.
Think Dirty. I love that app.
Yeah.
That one I love. That's my go-to as far as just type it in and it'll kind of tell you that rating.
Yeah. The other one I've heard of is Yak, but I think either one of those are great. So and that, start somewhere.
Be helpful. Yeah, just starting somewhere. I also like Detox Market for clean beauty products.
Okay.
That's another really good one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Beauty Counter. I mean, there are some companies that are just known for having cleaner options. So doing your due diligence on what you can control is where to start.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So we have been all over the place on this, but that's great.
I love it.
I love it. To recap, we're talking about stress, toxins, overload, how our body reacts, all of those things. Do you have any parting words of wisdom you want to share? And also, how can women connect with you and get more in their lives?
I think what I'd like everybody to know is that your body isn't broken. Like I mentioned before, I mean, your body is powerful. It can heal. Your body, your symptoms are a signal. It's not saying that your body is broken. It's just giving you a signal, and it's just feedback that there are ways that you need to be supported better. And so I want to empower women in that fact that your body really is miraculous and is fighting for you every single day. Oftentimes we just need guidance on figuring out what's going on. And as far as working with me, I'm most active on Instagram. My handle there is Christa Elza, my first and last name all together. My company name is eLive Health, and that website is elive-health.com. But you can always send me a DM on social media. I'm quick to respond there, and would love to connect with whoever is looking for a virtual experience to really get to the root cause of what's going on in their symptoms.
Absolutely. Well, Christa, thank you so much for coming on and just kind of spitballing a whole bunch of stuff with me. It's always fun.
It was so fun.